Good evening. I'm still tired. Last weekend, I threw a big, elaborate birthday party for a small child. I'm the guy who said, sure, I'll throw a big, elaborate murder mystery party for some friends of mine the very next week. I've been busy, but not so busy that I can't bring you tonight's BS with S.A.C, or as it's actually called, Bedtime Stories with Sean Arthur Cox. When last we left off, William had made his way to the encampment of the leader of the kobolds. His name is Wolfred. Why wouldn't it be? And after some going back and forth trying to get Wolfred to surrender without directly stating he's chosen because he's not chosen and he doesn't want to jinx it, he then accidentally says that he's chosen, and Wolfred is pretty sure that he's not. And now things are about to go south real fast from the sound of it. So, with that being said, let's keep going, shall we? All right. William apologized to the gods under his breath as he backed away from the table, inching toward the flap and the freedom that lay beyond. Ha! He said, trying his best to laugh despite the massive lump forming in his throat. That's ridiculous. But because I'm feeling generous, I'll give you one more chance. I decline. Starting now. One more chance starting now. Guards, Wolfred said, unconcerned with whatever threat William imagined he posed. I need your assistance taking out the trash. 6 kobolds entered the tent, swords out and scowls at the ready. William recognized the 2 from earlier. The other 4 he did not know, but could tell by the masterful way they held their swords that they meant business. The quality of their armor made them even more intimidating. Tiny bodies be damned. William thought back to the wolves that attacked him almost a week ago, remembered their ferocity and speed. Then he imagined them in armor, holding 18 inches of sharpened steel. William thanked his foresight to relieve himself before calling the parley. Okay, well, final warning because these guys didn't hear it earlier and it wouldn't be fair to them. The guards growled their disapproval and closed on the boy, forming a menacing circle about him. William shuddered and prayed his plan would work. He took the sword of McFinn and held it high above his head. By the power of McFinn! There was a popping sound as he swung the sword down, and a deep crimson liquid flowed down at the polished blade, dripping and pooling on the floor at his feet. Behold the blood of those it has slain! He held his left hand out, and a ball of flame appeared. It glowed, illuminating the room with its red-orange heat. He could see its light reflect in the eyes of the kobolds, some of whom began to reconsider their uncompromising stance. Behold the fires of hell from which it was forged! He waved the blood-soaked blade over the flames, igniting the sword. And the suffering that those who taste its steel shall endure forever! The sword rippled in the air, leaving a banner of fire in its burning wake. One of the kobolds made moves to take a swing, but William held his left hand out, fireball still hovering, waiting to be loosed against its prey. The 2 eyed each other, William and the kobold, each daring the other to blink first. The kobold jumped forward, but William reacted faster. Huzzah! He said, and the ball of flame flew from his hand, connecting with the creature's chest. The kobold looked down in disbelief. It's me, it said, its tiny voice quivering. The wounded creature collapsed to the earth in a crumpled heap, an arrow protruding from his chest, which surprised everyone in the room except William, who felt something else entirely. He saw the kobold lay on the floor in agony. Tears welled in its wolfen eyes, and its soft whimper tore at William's resolve and made him want to rush to its aid. He had killed someone, not an animal or animate skeleton, but a creature that could think and speak and feel. His stomach churned in twisted knots. He wanted to be sick, but held his disgust in check. If he wavered now, the poor thing, monster though it was, died for nothing. No one moved. His eyes traced their trajectory back and forth between William's hand and the wounded kobold. Your sword lets you shoot flaming arrows? Dumbfounded surprise laced Wolfred's words. That is the strangest enchanted sword I have ever heard of. Yeah, well, like I said, it's really powerful. The flame on William's sword began to flicker and fade, so he lowered it out to the side. Blood-red liquid ran down it once more, igniting on the flames and flooding the room with its brilliant blaze. Another ball of flame appeared in William's left hand. "This chance is seriously your last chance to leave Barrow's End as soon as possible." "Where?" Wolfred asked. "Here," cried William. "This is Barrow's End. We just went over this. You've been camped out here for almost a month. How can you not know this?" "Sorry," said Wolfred. "Not the least bit apologetic. I forgot. Since there is some confusion about where I meant, consider this your final last chance to back down and leave by the end of the week." "I think not." Wolfred charged William's sword drawn back and poised for the kill. William deflected his blow and spun back into the left, narrowly avoiding the strike. A kobold drew near, but the young adventurer let loose another shout of huzzah. The kobold found himself pinned to the ground by an arrow whose flame threatened to consume the creature's tunic. The kobold's eyes went wide in terror as he fumbled to free himself of his clothes and leather armor and anything else that could burn. William noticed 3 kobolds approaching from his right, armed with 4-foot spears. A murderous look in their eyes told him everything he needed to know about their intents. They would not go for the legs or hands. The tips of their spears hungered only for the blood of his heart. William smiled. Everything followed his plan nicely. He parried a couple of their attacks, allowing a third to pierce his shirt and sink in deep. 2 feet, at least. The others in the room stared at the hit, awed. The wound didn't bleed, didn't even faze the boy. William drew himself closer to his attacker, pulling the weapon in farther as he went. 3 feet in, and still no sign of injury, nor penetration from the back. William held the flaming blade to the small of the monster's back, pulling him in closer. The ball of flame in his left hand hovered inches from the kobold's face. William's expression conveyed nothing but cool wrath. "Run away, little man." The kobold dropped the spear and darted from the tent, never once looking back. The others looked on in absolute horror as William shoved the remainder of the spear deep within his chest, until his chest had at last swallowed it completely. "Now," he said, slow vengeance burning cold in his eyes, "this is absolutely your final last chance to leave before I cut you to burning ribbons, one by one." Several kobolds took slow, cautious steps toward the door, but Wolfred shot them glances that froze them in place. "Hold fast, men," he said, full of authority. "Remember the prophecy." The kobolds eyed one another, then Wolfred. They gave each other confident nods and pressed in toward William once more. A hailstorm of swords followed immediately thereafter. William parried to the best of his abilities with the lesser of the 2 swords and wished he could pull the dagger or scimitar without sacrificing the flaming arrows. "Prophecy?" he asked, leaping over a blow aimed at his calves. The kobold general smiled and began to quote a bit of rather stilted poetry as William frantically jumped and dodged and parried. "One shall come to lead them home, to farmland green from lands of stone, and armies shall he make to rise, for taking lands from those they despise. And all shall make it, all but one, to live in peace when the autumn moon signals the first harvest of Kabira root." William stood still for a moment, forgetting to defend as the prophecy finished. He hesitated to act, to say what was on his mind, but the thrust of a blade, fortunately to his chest where it literally had no impact, brought him back to his senses. He didn't want to say it, but the words blurted out before he could stop them. "That last couplet didn't even rhyme!" Blades rained down on him in response. These kobolds, it seemed, were very serious about their poetry and took criticism none too kindly. He would have to remember that if ever invited to judge an interspecies bard competition. "Excuse me, Mr. Poet Laureate. Your limited tongue doesn't have a word for when the autumn moon signals the first harvest of the Kabira root, let alone one that rhymes. You try translating the beautiful complexities of kobold language into this atrocious mess you call a language." William weaved between the net of swords and spears that closed round him. He had 5 plus the general to contend with, presuming. A half-dozen more kobolds entered the cramped quarters, each fresh and ready to fight. Their teeth were bared and their weaponry pointed menacingly in his direction. Fantastic. Now he had 11 kobolds plus the general actively seeking his blood, and who knew how many outside, passively waiting their chance. "Why do I keep thinking these things?" he muttered. He huzzaed another flaming arrow, missing his target but hitting the room's canvas walls. The fire spread across the walls, threatening to bring the burning tent down on all of them. Figuring there to be no harm in adding more fuel to the flames, he held the sword of McFinn low in as menacing a manner as he could. Scarlet liquid flowed over his blade once more, sending waves of flame washing over its length. William allowed his opponents to back him into a corner, and when the kobold felt sure he had nowhere to run, nowhere to dodge, he slashed at the canvas walls, igniting them as the blade sliced through, and stepped outside, where he severed the rope holding the tent up. The flaming fabric came crashing down in a heavy heap. Small forms bobbed beneath the burning cloth, struggling to make their way out. Kobolds turned to see the remnants of the kobold army looking on, a mix of fear and hatred in their furious puppy-dog eyes. He flamed his sword again and made sure another ball of fire burned in his left hand before speaking. "Consider this your final warning. Leave Barrow's End, or how many final warnings have you got, boy?" the familiar voice of Wolfred called from behind him. William turned to see the general and 11 of his men pulling themselves free from the burning wreckage of a tent. One of them had pulled the body of their fallen comrade and laid it out on the ground. Another asked if that was a Union-approved escape attempt, whatever that meant. "Don't you guys ever die?" "Only one of us," Wolfred said. "Didn't you hear the prophecy?" "Bits and pieces," William replied. "It was a little distracted by your minions." "Well, allow me to paraphrase," said Wolfred, charging at him like a very small stampeding elephant that knew a thing or two about swordplay. The general hacked down at William's legs, but a quick parry and a step back saved the boy from what would have been a crippling wound. "One will lead the kobold people to retake their homeland." Another series of swings and dodges, strikes and parries. The general knew the use of a sword far better than William did. The boy didn't dare attempt to go on the offensive, even when the opportunity presented itself. He would not be done in by Wolfred's clever feints. "And all shall succeed but one." Another thrust of the general's sword, which William sidestepped, throwing its left arm out in a shout of "Huzzah!" The burning arrow whizzed out from his hands, knocking the oversized tricorn hat from the general's head. "I liked that hat," he whimpered, seeing the flaming hole spread. He turned to William with a glower and a hard edge to his voice. "I shall make you pay for that." William gulped as fury flared in Wolfred's eyes. "I really don't have much money, but I suppose I can work it off." "I shall take my recompense in blood," the kobold declared, a voice high and angry. "How do you know I won't kill you?" The burning blade no longer terrified them, nor the flaming arrows. They cared nothing for his weapon-swallowing chest. Surely by this point they all knew he was no swordsman. He had nothing left but bluff. "Or my armies. They shall seek terrible vengeance upon you should you somehow manage to slay me." "How many times must I explain this?" Wolfred asked. "All will succeed but one. You've killed my man Craggamore. That means the rest of us survive." He couldn't argue with prophecy. Damn. He couldn't surrender. To do so would betray Sarah and the rest of the town. Any efforts to continue fighting were futile. He couldn't kill them. Prophecy nagged at him. "All but one, you said. Have any of my townsmen been killed?" "No," said Wolfred indignantly. "We are not murderers, but we would not let word slip of our plans." "So it's possible that none of us humans are prophesied to die too. I mean, it did say all but one, right?" William feared to hope, but prophecies were known to be sticklers for semantics in the past. There was no harm in asking. "I suppose we shall have to see," said Wolfred, who came at William with another lunge. The boy dodged and replayed the prophecy again, looking for any way to escape the wrath of the chosen. All shall make it, all but one. It might save him, or it might leave him overconfident and set him up to die. And that last line, "The army shall he make to rise for taking lands from those they despise." One key detail escaped William the first time, something that made all the difference in the world to the situation. "Am I to take it, Wolfred, that you are the one prophesied to lead these men to retake your homelands?" "I am," the kobold grinned with menace and spite. The two continued their dance of swings and parries. If it weren't for William's longer arms and sword, the little general would have taken him long ago. "Then that would make you the chosen one," Wolfred finished. Double damn. William had never heard tales of what happened when two chosen ones fought. He was, however, quite confident about what happened when a chosen one took on someone who was not chosen. Someone who, hypothetically speaking, may have stolen a sword of destiny rather than pulling it fair and square. Death. Bloody, messy, squishy death. So, William said, desperately seeking some means to avoid complete and total disaster, these, lands of yours, you're going to retake them, huh? As it is prophesied, so shall it be, the duel continued. Well, I've been giving it some thought, you see. William dipped around a powerful thrust and spun behind the general, preparing for the next assault. If Barrow's End is so important to you, maybe we can work out a deal. You get it winters and springs, we take summers and autumns. Nonsense, we take what is ours today, as the prophecy declares. Fine, you get autumns and winters, we'll take springs and summers. We shall have it all, each and every day. A clash of swords punctuating Wolfred's unflinching declaration. Then a pause. His eyebrows furrowed. Am I correct in assuming this is Barrow's End? Yes, William said, panting, grateful for the breaks. This small little town? Well, what's left of it, some of the surrounding farms. Why would we want a burnt husk of a village? Wolfred asked. Don't ask me, William said with his most heroic shrug. You're the ones who burnt it down. What sort of monsters do you take us for? Wolfred asked with genuine offense. It was one of you selfish wretches came at us from the woods on first night, screaming to his gods that if you humans couldn't have the town, no one could. You would destroy all you have if it meant another couldn't possess it. William rolled his eyes. It sounded like the sort of fool-headed vengeance Sarah's father would engage in. No wonder she took over commanding the raids. So you didn't kill anyone, you didn't burn the place down, and you're not here to reclaim our village for your own? Why would we raise an army for this land? The soil is rocky, the trees unpleasant. This is merely a staging ground. Oh, if this were our promised land, some very stern words would be had with the gods. No, our lands are south of the World River. South of? I believe those lands belong to... William smiled. His smile grew to a grin, his grin to a laugh, and his laughter to a mad cackling. Prophecy was a beautiful, strange, and mysterious thing. There would be no more bloodshed today. William had just the solution. No one else would be harmed, no more dead or injured. Swords would not even need to be drawn. It would be a perfect, almost bloodless victory that killed 3 birds with 1 stone. You are the kobold chosen one, he said, making sure every statement was clear, his train of logic implacable. And your victory is prophesied. There is nothing my friends and I can do to stop you, is there? Correct, Wolfred said, resting on his sword. Now will you submit? No, William smiled. I'm gonna help. And that's where we'll stop today. How did William pull off all of his clever little tricks? I'm sure you guys can figure it out. Leave your theories in the comments. But more importantly, what does William have in mind to help out these kobolds? How is he going to kill 3 birds with 1 stone? And what is his plan to do so bloodlessly? Think about it. If you don't figure it out by tomorrow, I'm sorry, you're going to have your answer tomorrow. So, there it is. All right, until next time, have good dreams and good night.